Joining us now is the Senior Pastor of Christian Cultural Center, Reverend A.R. Bernard. Reverend Bernard, we're so honored you've joined us today. Thank you.
It is my pleasure to be with you, Belinda.
So from the Disney stance against the parental rights bill in Florida all the way to rising crime, how do we as Christians with a biblical value system live in the culture and bring change where change is needed?
Wow, Belinda, you just jumped right into the hotbed of issues. Going to Disney, after the governor signed Florida's so-called, don't say gay, but that's not really true about the content of the bill. It simply tries to address what's happening in the realm of education. So, let me, to give context, I'm going to answer you from my faith tradition, which is, my Christian faith, from where I get all of my social values, and it informs me on the nature and ordering of society. So I think that protecting the rights, in fact, more than I think, I believe that protecting the rights of LGBTQ plus citizens to participate fully in the social and political life of American society, that's one thing. And it's something I support. However, imposing on children an ideology that is far outside the dominant social norm, I think, Belinda, that's irresponsible. It comes across as an attempt to precondition our children towards a gender fluid identity. You can choose your gender regardless of biological indicators. And I think that disrupts the natural course of development. Disney has fallen prey to the pressures of popular culture. And that's the challenge that we have as believers. We live in a tension between our separation as our Christian faith and believers, our distinction from the profile of the culture, and at the same time, engaging the culture that we live in, engaging the social order, being here. And it raises questions as to just how far involved do we become? How far do we go in adjusting to the culture without compromising our convictions? How far do we assimilate into the culture without losing our Christian distinction, our Christian ideology, and our Christian beliefs and identity? And this is not recent. This has been the challenge that we've had since the inception of Christianity 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire. What makes us different? And it's important for us to hold on to that. It necessitates a conversation about culture. How do we understand culture? What is culture? And essentially, it's what people believe, how they behave, the outcomes that they produce as a society. It's the character and personality of a society. Thus, we have what is called American culture. It's essentially the work of men's minds, the work of men's hands, sometimes, Belinda, inspired by God, and often inspired by fallen human nature, and can be demonically inspired as well. We as Christians have a responsibility as salt and light in this world to live out the Christian difference, but also to urge the culture, especially those in positions of power and influence, to measure their judgments and their decisions according to God's perspective on the ordering and nature of society. And that is our challenge, and it's not always easy.
What would you say to the Christian who has the right to express their faith freely, but in a culture where that's becoming more suppressed and harder to do?
I think that when your faith is a conviction and not a preference, that convictions are unchangeable, they're non-negotiable, and they grow stronger under pressure. I think that we need to become more sophisticated in how we engage the culture. We need to learn to speak the language of the culture so that we can clearly articulate what we believe to be the best way to order society according to God's perspective on it. And most importantly, Belinda, we've got to live it out.
Reverend Bernard, we'd like to continue this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back as we continue our conversation on faith and culture with Reverend A.R. Bernard. When I think about some of the issues that we're facing today, you know, we're coming out of COVID, and I know you have an amazing COVID recovery story, and inflation and the rise of crime, all of these type of things that we deal with on a daily basis. What would you say to the believer who could see these circumstances and be dealing with fear and anxiety, and knowing that is crippling in itself?
Let me get pastoral before I get prophetic on this. So pastorally, I would remind them of the anchor of our soul. And our soul is anchored in God, His consistency, His providential provision and guidance for humanity towards a very specific direction. And that is a new heaven and a new earth, that there'll be peace and all of those things that we long for in this society. And when I think of an anchor as something that drops to the bottom and holds the boat, it doesn't protect the boat from the storm, the winds, the rain, which will toss the boat. But what the anchor does is protect the boat from being carried away by those storms, by those winds. So we'll experience the crisis that comes with a changing society, with issues that are natural to societies. But when our soul is anchored in God, we won't be carried away by these things. Let me speak prophetically, because the prophetic is predictive to the future, but primarily analytical to the present. The prophets analyzed the spiritual, social, moral conditions of the society and then spoke a word from God into it. We know that God is a God of patterns and principles. Everything that God does, He does according to a pattern. His interventions in human history follow a pattern. And we have something called revival, renewal. Every time we have been in a crisis, especially in a nation that exalts God the way we do here in America, we understand that crisis simply reveals and exposes the deficiencies and inequities in our systems and structures, as COVID-19 did. But following that, there is always a renewal, a fresh breath of God blowing on society. And renewal is personal first, reevaluating our personal life, our core values, our core purposes, our priorities, reordering our activities, which COVID, promoted, reordering our personal commitments. It's relational, reevaluating the importance of our relationships, gratitude for the important people in our life, reprioritizing the relationship in our life, maintaining the ones that are important and productive, and maybe eliminating the ones that are not. It's a renewal of purpose. Why are we here? What's the meaning? Are we applying our gift, talents, and abilities the way we should? Structural renewal. How is our life organized? How is society organized? And most importantly, to respond to your question, cultural renewal. It forces a society to re-examine what we believe, how we behave, our traditions, our practices, our attitudes intellectually and emotionally. And I think that those are the winds of change that are blowing on the world, not just America, because COVID cast a shadow of death over the world, not just our nation, but especially here in America. We are reevaluating what we believe and how we should live.
Reverend Bernard, you are a voice of hope in our country, a voice of encouragement, and it's been an honor to have you with us today. I hope you'll come back and join us again soon.
It is my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us. Doug, it's back to you.